I was born December the 6th, 1918, in Zamość, Poland.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about your town, your childhood, and your family?
Yes, my parents had 6 children, and the town where I lived were a large Jewish community, and there was no industry. People had little business, or they were having a trade like cap makers and tailors and barbers and so on. And I was attending grade school there. And after I was 16 years of age, after I finished school, I started to work in a textile store until the war started. My father's name was Gershon Fuchs. My mother's name was Hannah Fuchs Chesner. My mother was born in Chelm, in the smart city. She was a very smart woman. They all say that Chelm, alle Narunim live in Chelm. It's not true. You can see the product that came out of a mother that was born in Chelm. And I had great grandparents and great grandparents. I mean, like grandfathers, and I remember my great grandfather. He was a tzaddik. He was very, very religious. When he passed away, they said he's nifter. He's nifter geworden. That's a Hebrew word for rabbis when they pass away. And my mother's parents were very religious parents. Their name was Zalman Chesner, was my Zayda's name. Yes, and my booby was Sarah. From my father's side, I did not have a family. His parents were not alive, but he had one brother, my father, and he perished in the war. And he perished in Belzec. That's what they told me. When I came home one evening from work, it was a Friday night. I walked maybe 7 miles to work because there was no transportation. My mother said that the war started out. We were very frightened. Next morning, a bomb fell by our house. But when I think of the bomb, it was like very shallow, because those bombs were very, and I even remember the place where the bomb fell. And this was in time of the holidays, of the Jewish holidays, when the war started. Everybody was. My father was a very modern Jew. He did not wear those black clothes, but everyone was very kosher, very orthodox, very religious. We did not handle money on Shabbos. We did not write on Shabbos. We didn't even wash dishes on Shabbos. I have only one brother. Well, my name is Tauba. My brother's name is Solomon. Then I have a sister, Bella. Then I have a sister, Ora. Then I have a sister, Genya, and a sister, Slava. And they're all alive and well. 5 of us are in the United States, and one of my sisters is still in the Ukraine. We are trying to bring her over to this country. Friday nights, we sat at the table, we ate together, and then my father sings miras, and And it was very festive. Shabbos was very festive. Next day my parents went to temple, and then we ate again. And after we ate, everybody ran away to their gardens, we went away, nobody washed dishes then. And it was nice because we were together. My mother loved us. And it was a nice life, a very nice life. I have very fond memories. Don't forget, I'm away from home since 1939, 1940. But I still remember everything. And I still remember my values and my ethics, and I still remember what my parents taught me. This will never go away. When the war started, we did not know what's going on and what will happen. We did not know what went on in Germany. We had no knowledge of it. So, but we had kind of a bad feeling, you know. When the Germans came in, and then they stayed a little while, and then they had a pact with the Russians that they're going to leave that area, and the Russians occupied that area. And the Russians were very good to the Jews at this time. So then the Russians left. The pact was over, and the Germans were supposed to come in. And when I heard this, all of my friends were running. I came home and I said to my mother, you know, Mother, I'm going to leave. And then my brother said, if you are leaving, I'm leaving. And then my sister, so my mother said, Kinderlach, let's all leave. So we gathered a few belongings and we left our home. I remember we walked barefooted from Zamość to Hrubieszów. It's many, many hundreds of miles, and in this city we had a ride on a wagon. Somebody took us along, and we went to Włodzimierz-Wolyński. You call it Ludman. Włodzimierz-Wolyński was on the border of the River Bug. The River Bug was the border, and after you crossed that River Bug, you were in the Russian zone, in the Russian occupied zone. At this time, there were thousands and thousands of refugees in Ludman. They were in the temples and all over. And we were hungry and dirty, and we slept in the shuls. So at one point, the Russians decided to send some people to the villages. So, and maybe we could get work. So my family and they settled us in Dubno. And Dubno had factories of hops that you make beer out of it. You know, they smell terrible. Hops is this. And we settled down there and we worked there a little bit. And then they announced that they're opening the door. Whoever it wants to go to Russia can go. Meanwhile, I fell in love with a young man, and I was left behind. My family went to Russia at this time. This was 1940. And they married me off, and as soon as they left, they took away my husband to the Russian army. And I never saw him again. We had a baby, and my baby died of malnutrition. she was 3 months of age. She had a big head and a big stomach like those African children. And I did bury her there. Meanwhile, the Nazis came in. It was the war, Russia and Germany again. This was already 41. And after my baby died, I decided that I want to save my life. I was left there with my mother-in-law and 2 men, a boy and a son, an oldest son. And when the Germans came in, they took away the most beautiful man, young man. They came and they got him, and they never came back. Meanwhile, they built a ghetto, and I was in that ghetto, and my baby passed away, so I had in mind to save my life. I used to wash laundry for the soldiers and to bring home a little food. One day I went to the director and I said, why can't you open a laundromat outside the ghetto? And he said, okay. We opened the laundromat with the, you know, you had to wash with the boards. But every day I went out of the ghetto. Police took us out and brought us home in the evening. So one day I heard something that, this was maybe 3 months later, that all the people that have trades will live and the other people will perish. They will divide the ghetto in 2. When I heard this, I went to this director, I don't know, he was an officer actually, that opened the laundromat, and I was the first one to get a piece of paper that I have a trade. And I asked them if my mother-in-law could be on this, and they said no. Within maybe a month, the ghetto was divided and they all died. And I still said to myself, I have to save my life. I was so lucky because I put my life on the line. I trusted a Ukrainian at one time, and I said to him, could you help me? I'll give you everything I have from the ghetto. I don't remember who he was, but he never came back. I think he had a heart attack. Otherwise, he would probably go to the police. I could have gotten killed. But I used to work in a restaurant, and I used to know a man by the name of Kucharevich. He was the owner of this restaurant. While going out to the laundromat, working at the laundromat, I saw him. And I said to him, of course I wore yellow stars. I said to him, Mr. Kucharevich, please help me. And he knew my husband. I said, I'll do anything for you. I'll give you everything what's in the house. And he said, I will help you. One day, he came. We went into the ghetto. The ghetto was almost Judenrein. I went into the house where my mother, where I lived there too, and took out all the belongings. She didn't have very much, very poor, very poor. And he took me out of the ghetto. he took me home. He lived in a different part of the city. He had a wife. At this time, his wife was 40 years of age, and I was maybe 22, 23. And he was a Pole, and she was Ukrainian. And they hit me in the basement, and they brought me food. But I knew they were killing Jews in the city. So one day, after 3 days, I said, would you please take me out of here? Take me somewhere, because if they'll find me, you'll suffer too. So he said, okay. He hired a man with a horse and wagon. He dressed me up. I dressed up like in a native Polish costume, and with a scarf. They gave me a piece of paper. I took her birth certificate, and he said to me, if anybody would stop us, you are my wife. We passed by cities. They were all boarded up, Judenrein. There were no people. We went from city to city, and we came to a place. It was already like before nighttime, and he said, this is it. We have to say goodbye now. And he took away the birth certificate, and they left me between heaven and earth, and I had no idea where I am. And they left. I opened the door, there was a barn. I looked in, there was straw on the ground. And I went in there and I lied down. And I said, I probably fell asleep, because when you have tzuris, you want to sleep. You don't want to know anything. And real early in the morning, I opened the door. I remember I had 2 suitcases with me. And I looked and I said, where am I? But then I saw some German soldiers. I was not afraid of the Germans. I went over there. I speak a very good German. And I asked them, where am I? What is... So they said to me that I'm on the border between Volyn and Podole. Those are 2 states of the Ukraine. And they asked me where I'm from, and I said, I am from the Black Forest. The Russians occupied there, and I cannot go back. And I asked him to let me cross the border, and they did. They asked me what I'm doing here. I said, I'm looking for work. So the city that I entered was Tarnopol. I've never been there. I knew it from the Polish geography, from the Polish map, but I've never been in this part of the country. So the first thing, I saw a sign, and I opened the door. They spoke German. You could speak German to a German, but you couldn't speak German to a Pole or to a Ukrainian, because they pointed you out. Right away they knew you were Jude. But I've learned German in school, and it's a big difference. It sounds like, Yiddish sounds like German, but it's not the same thing. But they thought it is. So I went in, and he asked me, was wollen Sie, Fräulein? So I said, ich suche Arbeit. And he asked me what I can do. I said, everything. can you milk a cow? I said, yes. I've never milked a cow in my whole entire life. So I found a room at a family, and I started to work, and I started to feel that the ground is burning under my feet, because I knew they were watching me, and I was there for 2 weeks. And I've seen I have to run. I went into that person and I told him I have a very sick aunt and I have to go and visit her. Could you give me a recommendation paper that I worked for you? He gave me a paper. This was the only thing I had to show to anybody. I had no documents, I had nothing. Sunday you could only survive with Germans. You couldn't survive with anybody else because they knew right away that you are a Jew. So I'm going to the train and I don't know where I am going. I don't know this part of the country. I'm sitting in a train and a girl walked over to me. They were looking for Jews, terribly looking for Jews. And she said, where are you going? And I didn't know where. And I said, where are you going? Oh, she said, I'm going to Chodorów. That's also a city there. That's Galicia. This part of the country was Galicia. And I said, what a coincidence. I'm going there too. Because I didn't know the city, you know, that part of the country. When we came to Chodorów, I didn't go to the front. I stepped to the backyard and I saw an office where it says Brückenbaum Unternehmung, German engineers. I went in there and that engineer was very nice and he asked me what I want and where I'm from, and I told him I can't go back home, the Russians are there, the Schwarzer Wald, this was my alibi, and he offered me a job to cook for the people that work for him all week long, and they go home for the weekend. So I accepted the job, but he told me to come back tomorrow. I said, I have no place to go. He took me into a hotel, and they were killing Jews there already in Chodorów. He left me in the hotel. He said to the desk that not to bother me, he'll pick me up in the morning. He picked me up in the morning and he took me where I was supposed to. There was a cook, but I was supposed to be his helper. And right away they built for me like a little room, a room with a closet and a bed. And I had a home. And I worked there for a long time until he said to me, Maria, I was even registered there in the city hall. They registered me, and I used to go out shopping for them, for this. And he said one day to me, he said, Maria, you work too hard, I have to hire some help for you. I said, Herr Engineer, it's not necessary, I'm doing fine. And he sent in a Ukrainian woman, her name was Olga. She takes one look at me and she said to me, Ty Żydówka, Jude. I said, what are you talking about? I'm Polish. From this moment on, I had to plan my escape before they got me. I promised myself, if I live through the war, I will come and seek revenge. But you know, it's not. So I started to feel that I knew all the detectives. They were starting to watch me and to go after me. But I had a good friend, a German, and he helped me to escape from there. I told him one day, I said to him, I have to go from here. And he didn't ask me why. He said, I'll take your suitcases and you meet me in the evening in front of the train. I'll be waiting for you. And I came to the train and he was there, and he locked me up in a shop. He was also a German engineer. He was from Breslau. So he locked me up there. He came out to get me in the morning, and he said to me, Maria, tell me something. Is it true what Olga said? I said, nein. Because if you say yes, then you're dead, you know. He took me to a restaurant, we had coffee, and then we went for a walk. He took me to a main street. That city was, the name of the city was Stry, S-T-R-Y-J. And he took me to the main street where hundreds of trucks were running with Jews. They were, you know, the Jews were in the truck. They were taking them to the slaughterhouse. And there was one young man on the sidewalk. He jumped, and everybody was shooting at him, and he couldn't die. When I saw this, then I said, we have to go from here. He never asked me, he said to me, I don't care what you are. I just want to know if this is true so I can teach Olga a lesson. I never told him that I'm Jewish. He used to go home, he used to bring me clothes from his wife. He felt sorry for me. I was very young and I was alone, and he was a nice friend, but they were good German people. He was not a Nazi, he was a worker. He was a citizen, he was not in the army. So after this, I went to Morshyn. This was, it's a place where people go for vacations. You know, it's like a resort. And I started to work there in a German hospital. I only was working with German. When I worked for them, I was safe because the Poles and the Ukrainians recognized me. They used to tell me that I'm not Jewish, but I have Jewish eyes and so on. For some reason, they recognized me. I spoke a very good Polish. I'm educated, and they recognized me. But I denied it at all times. So I started to work in a hospital, and I worked in the laboratory. And other Gentile girls and men, they worked in the kitchen. And I got to know a lieutenant that used to come to the laboratory to get some lamps when you have a falling, because this electric lamps. And he used to come for a long time there. Meanwhile, the hospital was going away and they couldn't take me. They could not take me. While I was in the hospital working, I had a girlfriend that lived in Stri, and she asked me one evening to go with her to visit her grandmother. We went on a train, and I started to sing a German song. And as soon as I sang a few words, a Ukrainian came over to me and said to me, "You there." And he took me off the train. He took me into the station. There were probably about 10 or 12 Gestapo, and I spoke the language very well, but I didn't speak it there. I didn't understand anything. He came in, he said, Jude. And I remember I was very young, I had long hair, I had a brown purse, I had a beautiful little dress. I didn't look like an escapee. I looked normal and nice. And I came in, they told me to sit down. So I sat there, and he started to ask me questions in German, and I told that Ukrainian, I don't know what he's saying. You have to translate, because I don't speak German. He asked me, how do I know a German song? I said, I wrote it in Polish. I don't even know the meaning of that song. It's just the melody. They kept me there for a long time. Then a Pole came over to me and he stood me up and took me for my arm. He said, "Powiedz, że jesteś Żydówką. Say that you are a Jew, otherwise I'll shoot you." I said to him, "If you want to shoot me, you can shoot me." And I had the pistol right here. If you want to shoot me, you can shoot me. But I'm telling you that I'm not a Jew. You want to have me on your conscience, then you have me on, but I am not Jewish. And he looked at me, and they threw me into a little cell in the back of the Gestapo. And there were bunk beds there, and I lay down and fall asleep. And I said, God, if they were going to shoot me, I don't want to see it, or I don't want to feel it. 2 hours went by. They opened the door, and that Ukrainian that brought me said to me, "Ich Jude." Now they told me that I can go, but at this time, they had a curfew there. If you went out after 9 o'clock, you were shot. So I said to them that I cannot go now because they'll shoot me on the street. So the same Ukrainian that brought me in took me over to my girlfriend's grandmother the same evening. I don't know what to call this. I was so lucky. I used to I told my daughter that I felt God is leading me through my way, and she couldn't understand this until she saw that movie, Europa. I went through exactly the same thing that this young man. And she said to me, "Mother, now I know what she's saying," because she said to me, I never gave myself credit. I said, no, God led me in the right directions. And Sandy, I saw God. God led me through my way. I was in so many situations. So the next day we went back to the hospital, and that the hospital was going to go away, and they couldn't take me along. They had too many people. And here they left, and I'm walking around in it's like a wooded area. And at this time, the Poles and the Ukrainians they were burning churches, they were fighting among themselves. And one girl said to me, Maria, why don't you stay here, come and live with me? And I said, no, they would have killed me because... And then I'm walking and crying, and I said, my goodness, what am I going to do now? And I saw again some soldiers. And I went over to them, and I asked them what they are doing here. And they told me they are Nachkommando. You see, they were the Wehrmacht. They were running from the Russians because they did not want to get in to the, how they call it, to be captured by the Russians. So they were moving towards the Americans. And I said, who is he in charge? Oh, he said, we have a lieutenant here. And I said to them, is he a good person? They say yes. I went to see that lieutenant, and this was the same lieutenant that I did his lamps. And he said to me, Maria, why are you here? What do you want? Or why didn't you go to the hospital? And I told them they couldn't take me along. Would you please take me along with you? Because if I'll stay here, the Ukrainian will kill me. And I'll do anything for you, for the soldiers. I work hard. Just take me along. And he said, Maria, you'll come with us. Right away, he sent the soldiers to bring my suitcases. And they were there for another 3 days. I could not wait for them to leave because I was really frightened. So we went away from over there, and the first stop was in Romania. They knew me that I'm a Polish girl. My name is Maria, and that's all they knew about me. In Romania, we stopped, and I was curious. I went out I was riding in a kitchen wagon, in a military kitchen wagon, and I went out and I went into the stores. There were Jewish butchers, bakers were open. This was in 42. And I didn't say anything to anybody. You were so frightened. You were afraid of your shadow. And then at this time, Romania, how to say, capitulated. They surrendered. So I said to the lieutenant, would you please leave me here? I'm so tired. I'm afraid of the bombs. And he said, Maria, you cannot stay here. You come with us. When I'll say you can go, you will go. Of course, I went with them because they probably would think that I'm a spy. From Romania, we went to Hungary. We were there for a while. I've learned a few Hungarian words. Meanwhile, he had more people with him. He took along some families that didn't want to get into the Russians. And there was another girl named Maria, but she did not notice me. I mean, she did not suspect me. And we were in Hungary for a while, and we always had private quarters, the women. That lieutenant went to families and asked for private facilities so we can live in the, not together with the soldiers. He was a nice man. We were there, and then we were traveling. We were in Czechoslovakia, and I worked very hard. I worked so hard. I peeled potatoes, and I worked very hard. And on top of everything, I was so frightened because I sit inside of a military kitchen, and from the top, they came down with those bullets, you know, they were shooting real low, and I was very frightened. And so we were riding, and I was in Czechoslovakia, and then they never spoke about Jews. They never spoke about camps. I did not know if there's some camps. I don't know. I didn't know about Auschwitz. I didn't know about any of those things. I only know about Dachau because this lieutenant talked about Dachau. This is why I heard. But I didn't know about camps. So this was from 1942 to 1945. They were talking among themselves about Hitler, that he committed suicide and this and this. And one day the lieutenant opens the door from that kitchen and said to me, "Maria, the war is over. You don't have to be afraid anymore." I was afraid of the bombs, you know. And he said, "The war is over." This was May the 5th of 1945. This was in Austria, near Vienna. I went out of that kitchen wagon, and I sat on there was a real rack, like a Lenin stone rack, a real big one. And I sat down, and I started to cry. And I said, "God, I survived the war. Where am I going from here? Who do I have? Where am I? Who am I?" And I cried very much. Then they were taken in to check out, but they were let out right away, and everybody went home. And the lieutenant gave me an address. I should come to his city. And my cook that I cooked with him said I should come to his city. So after this, I went to his city, and I lived in a room with a family.
Where was that?
This was near Wiesbaden. Each time in town, yes. And I started to search Jews. I read the paper. Meanwhile, I had to live, so I worked in the American kitchen. And I washed clothes, and I cleaned, and I had to pay my rent. I lived, her husband did not return from the war yet, so I lived there, and I looked for Jews. I couldn't find any Jews. I didn't see anything about the Jewish people. So one day I saw in a Frankfurter Wochenschau, I saw a little tiny uprising that there's some Jewish people in Wiesbaden. There is a Jewish office in Wiesbaden. I went to Wiesbaden right away, and they would not accept me as a Jew. They said, everybody wants to be Jewish now because of the care packages. I said, I don't need your care packages. I want to find my family. I knew my family went to Russia. I knew maybe someone is alive. And I was coming 10 times. They couldn't get rid of me, so they called out a Jewish Polish chaplain that spoke Polish to me. So when he came and he opened up a siddur, and he asked me how my mother koshered the meat, and he showed me a Muggen David, Star of David, and I answered all those questions, and I couldn't say it, but I know how to read Jewish, as a Aleph, a Gimel, and he said, this woman is a Jewish woman. After this, they asked me what I want. I said, I want my name back. I want to find my family. Maybe someone is alive. So they told me to go to Frankfurt am Main. There was that Rabbiner Dr. Neuhaus, and he will tell you all about. I came to Frankfurt am Main, and Rabbiner Dr. Neuhaus saw me, and he asked me, mein Kind, he was a German rabbi, what do you want? And I said, I want my name back, and I'm looking for Jews, I'm looking for my family. And this was February of 1946. And he told me to go to Psalzheim. This is a displaced person camp. And the transportation was terrible. Then you have to hitchhike on trucks, and they didn't have anything like we have buses. And I came to Psalzheim, and people are walking and singing, thousands of people, happy people. And I was waiting, the office was closed, and I was standing on the side, and I stood next to a young man, maybe he was like 17, and I asked him Polish if he knows somebody from Zamość. And then Mr. Biterman went by, but he was not from Zamość. So he took me into someone from Zamość, and this is how I survived the war. And later we came to the United States in 1948, and life went on. But if God forbid this would happen today, I would never survive. I was young, I had the courage, I want to live. Because when my mother left back to Russia, the bombs were falling all over. It was a war. Everything was fate. This chapter of my life with the mother-in-law, with my first husband, with the baby, I blocked this out of my head because this is a long time ago. And I have another family, but sometimes I talk about it if I have to. I thought I'm the only Jew that I survived. That's why I waited so long. I wasn't sure. I didn't know about camps and crematoriums, and I started to look for my family. And one day, my husband, you knew Mr. Biterman, brought over a young man from Zamość. He came upstairs, and I asked him who he was. He told me. I knew his family, but he was younger than I am. And he said he's going all over Germany to look for his family. His father was a shochet, very religious man, family. And so we talked, and I said to him, wherever you go, whoever you see from our city, tell him that I am alive. And in Europe, you called, I told them I am Tauba Fuchs, Gershon Hittelmacher's Tochter. You knew the people by their father's trade, otherwise nobody would know who I am. So he came to Bergen-Belsen, and he met a man from Zamość, And he said to him, you know, Tauba Fuchs is alive. So he asked him, who's Tauba Fuchs? So he said, Gershon Hittelmacher's daughter. And he said, she has a sister here. Her sister lives in Bergen-Belsen. And he took in that young man to my sister's house. It was a barrack, not a house. And he said to her, I just saw your sister. Your sister Tauba is alive. She's in Salzheim. She said it couldn't be my sister. She said it could not be. And he said, yes, she's married and she lives in Salzheim. At this time we went, my husband and I went to Frankfurt am Main to register to go to the United States. We came home, my neighbor, next door neighbor, said to me, some men looked for you in a military outfit. I said, I don't know. After the war, I dismissed everything. I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't remember anybody. Whatever I did was to save my life, and I dismissed it from my mind. And she said, he'll be back. And I didn't pay any attention to this. In an hour he came back. He said to me, are you Tauba Fuchs? I said, yes. And he started to talk about my family. And I said, do you know my family? You have something to tell me about my family? And he said, I'm married to your sister. And we live in Bergen-Belsen. This was my brother-in-law, Mr. Koszakowicz. He's his father. So in Germany we were in 1948 we came to the United States. Now it's easy for me to tell this story, but this is not what I felt, what I feel now, what I felt then. The fear for your life, the fear for tomorrow. Can you imagine somebody has a gun by your temple, they wanted to shoot you? I feel very bitter about the whole thing. It shouldn't have happened because we are a people. It shouldn't have happened. My family survived, my immediate family, but where is the rest of the family? I had aunts and uncles and nephews and nieces and beautiful grandparents and other people's families. Why did this have to happen? I'm very bitter about this. When I was younger, I didn't have time to think about it. But now, when I think about it, I feel very, very bitter. And I don't hate the Germans so much. I hate the Poles and the Ukrainians because they were the ones that pointed out the Jews to the Germans. And the United States should have not been so lenient to let those Ukrainians into this country like this Bowman and somebody else, and that Jemaniak. He was a murderer. They all have blood on their hands, because I was there and I saw it all. And I feel bitter, and I hope that our children, the future generations, will not have to go through this. This was a terrible experience, and I suffer from it. As I say, I'm well physically, but it did something to me that I suffered.